everybody, next off the pile is 3 Stanley No.65 block planes. Let's take a look at them. The No.65 is a low angle plane. They're well suited for planing end grain, but they work just fine on every part of the wood. It's one of my favorite planes. All the parts appear to be there. The bottoms don't appear to look too bad, except for this one over here. The common thing on the low angle planes is a break out of the throat. I've got my number 18 user sitting next to a 65. The 65 is longer, same width, about a 1 5/8 inch iron, but the 65 is 7 inches long. It is probably one of the longest block planes that Stanley made. The book price of a 65 is $75 to $180, so they're a bit salty as block planes go, and it's time to break them down. And there's a look at them all broken down. Now I can better assess what kind of a mess that I've got here. So right off the bat, one in the center has been painted. It's not a good job. It's down on the machine surface where the iron rests at the throat. Shouldn't be any paint there. And of course we saw the chip out of the throat on this other one that's going to be made into a user. And the iron on the one that's going to end up being a user isn't marked Stanley, and somebody improvised those grooves in the back for the depth adjustment, but still it'll work as a user. So the next thing to do is get in my deep sink with some hot water, simple green, and my little scrub brush. So with the deep sink scrubbing done, there's a couple more things that have come to light. The user has got good japanning. This one over here, it needs to be redone. And the other thing I picked up on is the eccentric plates. They adjust your throat. The two of them curve down, one curves up. The one that curves up is on this plane here that was the oddball, because the other difference is if you look at this area right here, there's your machine surface, the U, and on the other two, that surface is flat. So it's possible that on, assuming this is the newer of them because their trademark is all the same, the ones that had them, that Stanley switched to the eccentric plate to curved up. That's the story I'm going to stick with. So with my wife preoccupied cooking supper, it's time for me to bring my favorite stripper into the shop and take it all off. I keep a small coffee can and a brush in the shop all the time, sole purpose of doing stripping. I don't clean the brush. If you pour in what you need, let the brush sit in it for a couple minutes, it'll soften up. You brush your stripper on, use the brush to work it around every couple minutes, and when you're done, throw the brush back in the can. Make sure you've cleaned all the stripper out by applying it to your plane, and it'll dry up, harden again, and sit there till next time you need it. So while the stripper's doing her thing, I'm going to use dental picks to remove some of the paint that's on these planes. See a little bit white right there. I'm going to use steel wool to just kind of buff up the japanning a little bit. Nothing aggressive. I'm going to use my 150 grit paper on a stick to get into the inside flat machine surfaces and clean them up just a little bit. And there's what the bottoms look like after I use the dental picks, and also those little wire brushes are really handy. Next is to clean up the edges of the bottoms and the sides. I use 150 grit paper on my rubber sanding block. Do that all around the edges till they look like I like them. And then on the sides, I use my little hand scraper. It's a box knife, razor knife with a burr, and keep it at an angle and scrape the edges. So I'm going to do that, then we'll take a look, see what they look like. So I've sanded around the edges, and I use my scraper on the sides and the bottom. This allows me to control the amount of patina that remains. You got two choices. Either you try to retain the patina, or you just lap these things down. I try to retain the patina whenever I can. What I want to do now is take the indents on the side where your thumb goes and use my wire wheel to clean that up a little bit, because it's hard to get down into. And there's what they look like after the wire wheel. When you're working on these machine surfaces, you can usually see the machining marks. They run straight from front to back, and those little indents run up and down. So when you're scraping, scrape with the direction of the marks, just like sanding with the grain of the wood. Same with taking the wire wheel on the sides. If you want to retain those original grinds, you got to work with them. So the next thing I'm going to do is use my sponge sander and some steel wool. And after that's done, I hit them with some 3000 grit paper on my rubber sanding block, and they look really good. Still have patina, still have original machine marks, but can't make the broken throat go away. Now this one has some very shallow pitting. I don't know if you can see it towards the back. I mean, if you're a perfectionist, it'd take just a couple minutes to lap that out. The next thing I want to do is get that other bottom caught up to where the first two are. The stripper's been stripping for a little while. I like to get in there with my dental picks before I rinse it off, and I just go all over the place like I'm doing right here and just rub it. So the paint came off just fine. I put it into my sandblaster, finished it up to prep it for a new finish. I did the same treatment to the edges of this plane, but instead I opted to lap the sides and the bottom. The bottom's beautiful, and so is the other side. They didn't look too good. It was rough, they were rusted, some shallow pitting, and just a little bit of lapping. On my high-speed lapping station, 4 pieces of 150 end to end, and this little 65 is beautiful. And if you do decide to lap your plane, make sure that the mouthpiece is in. You don't want to lap it without that because they won't match up. So the next step is to tape off the bottom so you don't get finish where it's not supposed to be. And there's what it looks like when it's all taped off, ready to put a finish on. So I moved the base into my OSHA approved paint booth, and I put the first coat on. And to speed up the drying process, I got my OSHA exhaust fan running. Next thing I want to do is clean up the caps. I'm going to hit the inside of the underside in my sandblaster. So this is what they look like after the sandblaster. If you decide to do that, you want to use either low pressure or hold your tip quite a distance back from the parts, because the nickel coating will get blasted off if you're not careful. And there's the bottom side of the caps all cleaned up. I'm going to flip them over and use one of my sponge sanders on the top. I used an old worn sponge for the cap, and at the same time there's about 5 coats on the base, and it's ready for the final coat. The next step for the caps is some 5000 grit paper, and the secret clear satin final coat has been applied to the base. With the 3000 grit sanding done, the next step for these caps is the buffer. Yeah, baby! Those look really good now. That buffer makes a big difference. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes since the final coat was applied. It's a good time to take a razor knife and just run it around the edges and get the edge off, just like this. So there's all the parts. The closest base is the one that was just refinished. The other two ready to be coated with the old dirty oil rag. The dirty oil is applied. Next step, it's on to using my little scraper on the iron. So all 3 irons are scraped. Then I decided I'd lap them with 150, both sides. Then I finished them with 3000 on my rubber sanding block. And sharpened them to a razor edge. And a good look at the business end. Front and back, looking really good. Last thing to do is to clean up all the small parts. Here's a look at everything, all done, waxed, and ready to put back together. So one of those bases has got new Japanning, the other 2 are old, just cleaned up really well. Caps look beautiful. Let's put it back together. And like magic, got 3 more planes, all done. But we got to get a look at them from all angles.
It's a real shame that that one throat's screwed up, but I imagine it's still going to make a good user because there's no crack in it. That means it's time to see how they perform. For this test drive, I'm using a nice 3/4 inch piece of clear pine. Seems to be working just fine. I'd have to say an A+ is in order for this one. And this iron cuts. Next up for the test is the 65 with a chipped throat. Ooh, look at that. Making some mighty fine shavings. I'd say it's looking like another A+ performance on this one. Gliding across that board like it's butter. And just like the one before it, this iron cuts. Passes the test. Next up is the 65 that I redid the Japanning on the body. Look at that. Another butter knife going on here. Just like the two before it, this iron cuts. And some impressive cutting it is. I'd give this one another A+ performance. Passes the test. It's definitely easy to see why these 65s are such a popular plane. It was a great plane to use, all three of them. And they are beautiful. Look at them sitting there on their bed. So far this month it's 12 down and 3 more to go, and then I'm done with block planes for a little while. And of course we can't forget the unexpected great side effect that these block planes have allowed me to regrow my hair. So these 365s are going to go on eBay during the month of June. Coming up real quick. I hope you enjoyed this video. On to the next ones. Time for supper. Bye.